Hey everybody, Steve here to my dice, and welcome to my New Year's Q&A. I mentioned this about a month ago, something like that. But I got a whole bunch of questions, so let's dive in right into them and get them answered. I do this once in a blue moon, thought why not. So some questions here. So first off, from Nick at Beer 40K. He says, Happy New Year, mate. Well, Happy New Year, Nick. I know we're near the end of the month, but Happy New Year. Says, have you ever played one-page rules, and what are your thoughts on them? I haven't played one-page rules, but I have read through them, and I love them. They are reminiscent of 4th ed, 3rd ed, more 4th ed. It was a simpler game back then. It was not so complicated like it is now, with all these different rules for every single unit, every single army, all the stratagems. It's really broken down and very, very simple. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with all that cool stuff. It just it really gets down to the basics, right? It's a lot of fun. I would love to try it one time. We'll see what happens in the fullness of time. I'd love to do it. But no, it's a lot of fun. I think they call it the Grim Dark for 40K. But yeah, even the way it's designed feels like the 3rd and the 4th ed rule books. A lot more. It was I don't know, maybe it's nostalgic, whatever. But it seemed a simpler time for the army books and all that. He also has any views on 3D printing for 40K minis. This is a funny one because this one is sort of already here. I have no problem 3D printing models to a point. It's a very gray area right now with 3D printing. It's funny, when I was in college for my computer courses, one of the courses we did was technical writing, right? They want everybody to be able to write properly while fixing computers, and the topic I chose was 3D printing. So I went through the technical stages of how 3D printing works, and I found an old piece, or a piece that was a lot like the old school defense lines, those small ones. And so I did that. They did the 3D print at the college I went to, and then when I was showing the teachers, going through my spiel, and she wanted to see if I could find it, I went there and I got the 404 error. I had been removed. So obviously Games Workshop had gotten removed, which is fine. But yeah, no, it's sort of a gray area. I don't have a problem with it. I think I know some people say it's the future. It's already here. Lots of companies already do a lot of 3D printing to get their products out through Kickstarters and all that. And I think eventually the big companies, Games Workshop, and even Wizards of the Coast, I know their names are a bit shady right now, but even they, I think eventually will get to the point, I think the technology will get to the point where you'll be able to print at your home. I think eventually everyone will have access to some good quality printers, and you'll go on, say, the Games Workshop website, and you really want to buy a Space Marine Primaris Chaplain, but you don't want to go to a store, you don't have a store nearby, and you have a really good printer, and you'll buy the file. It probably won't be any less expensive than going and buying the model online. I mean, business is business, right? These companies will want to make money regardless of the perceived worth that other people have. But I think you'll be able to print it eventually, just one day, throw that in the in your cart and buy the file, then print it off from there. I think it's an inevitability that it's going to go that way eventually. But yeah, no, thank you, Nick, for those questions. Those are good questions. I had a whole bunch from Mini Warzone, Pete at Mini Warzone. Again, I'm gonna put these channels that have sent questions down below. Check them out. I mean, Nick's, if you ever want to know anything about Necrons, ever, Nick's channel is one to go to. And Pete has just so much stuff all over the place. It's amazing, right? He's covered so many different things. Okay, looking at your hobby interests and in God, I wrote these down. What, in general, what tugs the most nostalgia strings for you? That's an interesting question. Again, it depends on the hobby, like, in general, right? Like 40K, it's funny. The question there, the one-page rules, that's one of those things that tugs at my hobby heartstring a bit, because it is a lot like those rules of old, right? The 4th edition, which was, I think at this point has been my favorite edition of all of them. I think it just hit every single point in need to hit back then. Again, it's just the right thing at the right time, if it's a weird way to say it. You know, I mean, it's really weird right now. I feel that a lot of companies, whether it's be video games to movies, what have you, their nostalgia is a big thing right now. If you look at like the 90s show is on Netflix, and that's just it's a sequel to the 70s show, which was a big hit when I was a teenager / early teens, right? So, or early 20s, not teens, early 20s. So, I mean, there's that nostalgia factor, and that seems to be the big thing. All these shows are coming back. Picard, the Star Trek series Picard, again, nostalgia from the 80s and 90s when we were younger. Nostalgia is a big thing right now. It seems to be a massive selling point, whether, again, it doesn't always hold up. I was actually playing Final Fantasy 14, which is a fantastic game if you haven't played it. And at one point, I was able to get what's called Magitech armor. If you've never played it, it's just this big bipedal suit of armor you sit in. It's a mount, you get to travel with it. The music that played, though, when you get into it, every mount has different music. When you get in, is actually one of the main themes from Final Fantasy 6/3. We had a weird numbering system here in Canada, or North America. This March to Narsh, as it's called, and it's just this beautiful piece of music. It was amazing back then. Obviously, it's like a full orchestra doing the song in this game, but it brings back those memories of playing that old game on the Super Nintendo, Final Fantasy 3/6, depending on which numbering system you like to use. It's just the stuff that brings up the happy memories. That's the different things, right? No, yeah, that's a good question. Thank you for that one. How do you relax if you aren't able to do the hobby? Playing video games is one thing. I don't know. I mean, there's always something. I mean, I picked up this book, Nexus there, and other stories. It's one of those cool ones that came out with 9th edition. It's sort of like a beginner book, right? If you've never been a hobby before, but it's still lots of fun. I do stuff like that. I mess around with the list builders I have, stuff like that. Other relaxing things, I mean, that's pretty much it. I mean, life is what it is, and you try and make the best of it, and sometimes I'm just not able to relax, unfortunately. Sometimes you just, you try and, other times, God, I wish I had a more solid answer to this. It's just sometimes I'll play some video games, I'll watch some funny videos, I'll binge part of a show that I really like, an older show that I kind of, I've watched 1,000 times just to relax a bit. That's pretty much it. If I'm not able to hobby, I'll find some other way of doing it. Tell us about any other interests or hobbies that you might have. Got a bunch. Comic books is a big thing for me. I'm a huge fan. Sorry, that was weird. I'm a huge fan of Marvel comics. Comics in general, but mostly Marvel comics. Got a big collection of them, so I still collect and read those. Like you said, video games. I'm a big fan of just a whole bunch of different sci-fi shows. I'll get on those. I'm a big World War II history buff. So, I'll read some books I have on that, or watch some shows on that, hit stuff on YouTube, depending on the mood I'm in, and a whole bunch of different things. Part of it's also filled up with kids. I don't know if you want to call it a hobby, but I'm always doing something with my kids here and there, and hanging out with them. I've got my daughter's now getting into anime, so I've been watching and showing her a lot of the the kid-friendly animes from the past. So that's sort of a fun thing that I've been able to do with my daughter recently. So yeah, I wouldn't say anime is a hobby, but I'm sharing it with the younger generation now, so that's a lot of fun. Do you have a top 3 sci-fi movie list? Oh man, you're making me think, Pete. It hurts my brain. Top 3 sci-fi movies. Oh, I'm gonna have to say one of them's definitely Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan. I mean, I'm a Trekkie or Trek or whatever you want to call it. That's definitely up there. Stargate is another good one. I like that one. Trying to think of some other sci-fi movies. Oh man, yeah. So Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan, the Stargate movie, that was really good. Trying to think of another sci-fi movie. It's like, that's got to be like top 3. There's lots of sci-fi movies. I love sci-fi, so there's lots of movies. I don't know what a third one would be that really stands out as like a sci-fi movie I have to watch. I don't know if I guess it's sci-fi. Yeah, I'd have to say the other one in the top 3 would be Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. I mean, it's science fiction, it's set in space, it's a Marvel movie, a superhero movie, but yeah, it's definitely a sci-fi movie. So I think those are my top 3. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan, and Stargate. I think those are my top 3. And yet, there's more. Would you prefer sci-fi or fantasy? Of the two, and I like fantasy. I mean, I've read Lord of the Rings, The Silmarillion, The Hobbit. I've watched the movies, the shows, the old cartoons. They're all pretty cool. I've read so many different, I'm a huge fan of the Dragonlance books from the days of yore. I've read lots of different things, but I think I'm definitely more of a sci-fi guy. I mean, I've watched, there's the classics, the Star Trek, Star Wars, all the big sci-fi movies, Aliens, Predator, like I said, Stargate. But I think, I've watched a lot more fantasy movies and shows than I've ever watched, sci-fi shows. I've watched a lot more sci-fi shows and movies than I ever have fantasy. I think sci-fi just intrigues us more because fantasy is set in, especially something like Lord of the Rings, where Tolkien tried to sort of tie it into our world, and it's in the past, it's happened already. The magic, especially something like Lord of the Rings, where it's a book about endings, where the magic's sort of gone. It's the old world is faded. But sci-fi definitely shows us, it's in the future, stuff that could happen in the future. It's full of what ifs and what could be's. So yeah, definitely, I'm a big fan of the sci-fi stuff more than fantasy. And then we have more. Pete was a busy man. This one kind of goes back to the other one. Is have you ever had long periods of time when you couldn't a hobby for a reason? If so, how did you cope with it? It kind of goes back to that earlier question. You just kind of deal with it. No. If there's long times where I couldn't do the hobby, I haven't been able to play a game, and I haven't been able to play a game in a long time, or I can't paint a model, or do any train building or whatever. Again, I sort of hit the peripherals of it. I'll read the books, right? I'll peruse websites on it. I'll hit the Games Workshop community page. I'll play video games of it. I mean, today even I was playing a Necromunda Hired Gun, because that's fun, right? It's again, it's set in the 40k universe. It's a fun sort of brain dead kind of game. You just get to be thrown into the middle of one of the hives on Necromunda. You're a bounty hunter and you go on missions. You just get to fight gangers and gene stealers and giant ogrins and other weird stuff, all filled with 40k goodies in there. Yeah, so I'll just try and stick to the peripherals of it. I can't actually do the hobby, but I'll get my fix. Excuse me, I'll get my fix by doing stuff like that. I'll read through my codex, Space Marine stuff. I mean, I'm still been reading through the Arcs of Omen Abaddon book, because there's a whole ton of cool fluff in there, and obviously all the stuff for boarding actions. So that's, I mean, I don't know. There's kind of a fine line between doing the hobby and not. Like, is reading a codex doing the hobby? Is it not? Right? So I'm effectively doing the hobby, painting models up. Like, I just did this beautiful chaplain there. He was a Black Templar chaplain, but decided, you know what? I was going to rebase him, so I put him on a bigger base, and I just painted up the shoulder pauldrons. I know it's hard to see there. Ultramarines blue, so he's going to be leading my boarding actions, and also the Arcs of Omen detachment. I've actually been building that up recently. So yeah, again, that's sort of just on my phone, playing with the list builders as well. Again, I'm not actively doing the hobby, but so that's how I kind of get around it. And there's been those times where even I haven't been able to even do that, and it just sort of, it sucks, but you kind of move on and keep going, right? That's what you got to do. But yeah, mostly I just try and stick to peripherals, or like I said before, I'll dive into something else. I'll just do something that distracts me from that. Not the most exciting answer, but there you go. So thank you to Pete from Mini Warzone and Nick from Idic Beer 40k for those awesome questions. I hope you found the answers fun. Not sure if I'm going to do another one soon, maybe sometime in the summer, but stay tuned. And until then, I'm sign off. Keep rolling those dice, guys. I'll see you later. Bye.